G'day, Birdman Pete welcoming you to number 5 in the series No Crashing, No Kidding, Exercises for Would-Be Multi-Rotor Pilots. This series began, as some of you might remember, aimed at fixed-wing pilots who wanted to graduate to multi-rotors and who were having difficulties. But as the series evolved, it became very clear to me that the exercises I was coming up with were going to work just as well with any multi-rotor pilot. And today, number 5 sees you very, very close to graduation day. If you've been doing the exercises, when you've completed this set, you'll be ready to go off and invent your own career in multi-rotors. I feel a bit like a father who's taken the kids down to the pool and taught them to swim. They wanted to be worldwide swimming champions. He wanted them to stay alive in the water. And that has always been my hope for you, that you would have a painless, expense-free approach to multi-rotors. It doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be painful, but if you insist on going that way, I can't stop you. So, off we go to the field. I want to show you what so far you've seen very little of. That's the combination of yaw and roll. Do you remember the last exercise in set 4 where we made a walk across the park and around the lake? We took off with a tailwind and walked towards a large tree. During that walk there was almost no steering to be done, but as we approached the tree, keeping the aircraft relatively flat, we yawed left. Having yawed left, now the wind which had been on our tail was now on the left hand side of the aircraft, and we had to lower the left hand side in order to stop the wind from carrying us out across the lake. Shrewd move. There were several more examples of these flat yaw turns with some wind adjustment. Now there's good and bad to everything, and the seriously good feature of a yaw turn in a multi-rotor is that you're most unlikely to lose any height. The seriously bad side of a yaw turn in a multi-rotor is that if there's any wind, you are likely to drift, and you could drift quite considerable distances and bump into things. Not good. In this exercise, you see me trying to fly an S-shaped course around 2 white markers using only yaw turns. The wind is quite strong and it's quite difficult to stay upwind, and that's why the small amount of roll you do see is that attempt to counter the wind. I need to dot some I's and cross some T's, I think. I don't think it was crystal clear that the aircraft was slipping in any direction during those magnificent flat yaw turns. And that's because I was needing to hold a bit of roll, bank, to stop the aircraft from sliding back on me. Then I get to the turning point, level it up, rotate, and apply the opposite roll or bank to head off in the new direction. In the process, it all got confused. I don't think you saw very much slippage at all, but I promise you it was there. And in stronger wind conditions, it gets much worse. And that's where you need the combination roll and yaw turn, which I'm about to demonstrate. This is what it looks like sitting in a chair. You make your approach to the turn, holding a bit of bank because the wind's blowing in that direction. You hold that bank and start to apply some yaw to bring it round, level up, release the yaw, and off on the new heading. That's what's going to happen. And it all works very nicely. You don't lose very much ground at all. You shouldn't lose any. But there is a negative in this, and that is that you are likely to generate some extra airspeed. Now, I'm a little bit crafty with old age. For the demonstration purpose, I had to make the course flown quite short. And when you fly a short course, you find yourself inevitably flying slower. The moment you expand the course beyond the 20 meters, which I'm flying here, you will really notice that there is a significant increase in your ground speed on the crosswind legs. Taking off, nice and slowly moving down to the right hand marker for the left hand turn. Fairly shallow bank, small amount of yaw, and round we go. Notice I'm flying very low. This is below a meter. I don't want you to do your first experiments at this altitude. 2 meters is the right height for starters. And I'm flying low so that you can see the movement of the ground relative to the airframe, because the great benefit of the roll turn is it stops the movement on the original path. Watch. As I approach the marker and apply the bank, the ground stops. In effect, of course, the ground was never moving, but the aircraft was. That happens at each end. Stop. 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 And notice the acceleration on the straights. You'll notice after a while I get bored with holding it down to 20 meters and start to expand the course to about 30. Never mind about that, I'm sure you'll do exactly the same thing. Now, I laughed at the thought that some of you will be rushing to expand the length of the course to 30 meters or further, but it's not really a laughing matter, and you need some tactics once you start flying with the model further away from you, because strange things can happen. And the most common of those strange things is that just for a moment you lose track of where the aircraft is and where it's going, and you might make what can be a fatal mistake of bringing the aircraft back to hover. Now, the danger of coming back to hover is that the aircraft will continue drifting with the wind, and that might be good and it might not be good. When you've got to that point where it is a little distance away from you and you're not sure which way it is facing, the vital steps: add a little power. At this point, you do not want any loss of height. Add a little power, add a little forward stick, and it will move forward. Did you see a forward movement? If you didn't, it's almost certain that the aircraft is facing either straight towards you or straight away from you. In that situation, bring it back to the hover, apply a little yaw, and repeat. A little power, a little forward. Now can you see which way it's going? I think you will. And if you apply that, you will quickly find the way of bringing it back to you. Now, there is a more dangerous version of that problem, and that is when the model is a very considerable distance away from you. And now it appears to be mosquito-sized against the sky. One has to hope that the sky is clear and bright, because this is potentially a very dangerous situation. I can't demonstrate it while I'm sitting in a chair. Let's go and put it out on a nice clean floor and see if it makes any more sense there. Here we have the most improbable situation where a Cheerson CX-10 has flown to the edge of the pilot's visual range and he has no idea which way it's facing. We know it's facing straight away from him. But in this situation he applies a little power and applies a little forward cyclic and left roll and yaw and commences a big left-hand circuit. He now sees that it's proceeding from right to left. And he continues the turn and now sees that it's flying from left to right. He continues the circuit until he sees that the aircraft is no longer traversing across the horizon and is turning away from him. He knows a right-hand turn will bring it back to him, so round he comes gently to the right. He's now tracking from the right to the left. And if he continues this series of S-turns, he will inevitably find his way back to a safe, controlled landing. I said when I introduced the S-turn exercise that it had the capacity to be modified to achieve a slow, steady, progressive move towards a very different form of flying. That's what we're onto now. In the diagram we have the H stands for heliport, and our feet are standing about 2 meters behind the launch point. There's a left marker, there's a right marker, here's the wind. And this is the S-turn that you've seen me demonstrate. Taking off, going across the wind, downwind of the right-hand turn, left into the wind, across, right into the wind, and back, and round you go for several batteries until you're really relaxed and comfortable about these coordinated roll and yaw turns. When you are comfortable with that, experiment with the wind. twist your markers, your left and your right markers, so that you are at a different angle relative to the wind. Here we've shifted the markers 45 degrees and we've got a crosswind and a crosswind, a full crosswind, a tailwind 45 degrees and a full tailwind. You'll find that these modifications make quite a difference, and it's a very useful practice. Okay, now we've slightly varied the S turn. What's happened is we've expanded the length of this leg. So whereas once it was an S, now it's a rather skinny figure 8 lying on its side. The exercise hasn't changed very much, except that you've got a few seconds pause between making this turn and this turn. Okay, moving to the next. We've expanded the figure 8 even further. Now it's a big fat 8. And this is more or less a constant turn. Whereas in the last exercise it was 2 turns, 1 turn there and 1 turn there. It's now a 90-degree turn here and a shallow banking turn in this section, and then the turn tightening and opening up to fly more or less straight. Tighter turn here, shallow turn here, and up round the side like so. And now it radically changes. Now it's a square figure 8. Taking off, more or less right angle turn, more or less right angle turn, and so it continues until you get to here. Now this point is critical. We don't want to start that turn too early, because the line would take us very close to our own body and we might feel threatened. If you feel threatened, move it over a little further, so that you know there's plenty of clearance for the aircraft. Any misjudgment will see the aircraft going down here. You're not threatened. Okay? And then round you go and back and again. Now in this diagram I've drawn this leg as going a considerable distance further beyond the wind. There's no reason why you shouldn't have started this turn here and made it more or less the equivalent of that. Okay. And now to the final version of the exercise. We've gone turn, straight, and now this path here is exactly in line with the centre of our view and the wind. We are flying straight at ourselves. There ain't no margin for error with judging wind drift now. This is not the moment for a yaw turn. This is a rolling turn. We want to get away from ourselves. But practice, practice, practice. You will find that this becomes much less stressful as time goes by. And did you notice that I took the exercise in front of the markers? In effect, I've moved this point at least 3 meters further forward and away from ourselves. As you get used to it, you can go back and bring these turns right close to us. I would suggest that 1 meter is an unhealthy close pass. So my thinking is that 2 meters is probably about ideal when you really do have the idea of flying nose in. Well, there you go. It's the end of the trail for me. 5 programs, 5 sets of exercises and an introductory program. I hope you found something of value there. Fixed wing flyers don't always find multi-rotors easy. But in the last week, I've had the special privilege of leading a multi-rotor flyer into fixed wing, and he didn't find that really easy either. So you see, there are different strokes for different blokes. Most of all, I hope you found something useful, and even more importantly, I hope there's been no crashing. And I'm not kidding.